Blood dripped from the guard's torn arm as the bulldog's teeth tore deeper into flesh. 3 men already lay in hospital beds. Nobody could touch this beast. Then a tiny hand reached through the car window, and the monster that savaged grown men went completely silent. What this 7-year-old girl did next broke a mafia boss who thought nothing could crack him. The bulldog's name was Brutus, vicious, untouchable, scarred from underground fighting rings. Casimir Torino, the most feared mafia boss in Chicago, had paid a fortune for him, not as a pet but as a statement. Power, control, fear. For 6 months, nobody got within 10 feet without risking their life. Guards carried stitches. Trainers refused to return. Even Casimir couldn't reach the animal he owned. Then one afternoon, everything shattered. A small girl with dirt on her knees climbed uninvited into his black Mercedes. Brutus lunged, jaws wide, murder in his eyes. But she didn't scream. She whispered something, and the beast that nobody could tame laid his scarred head in her lap and closed his eyes. Casimir Torino had killed men without hesitation. But watching this moment, he couldn't breathe. If you're ready to hear the entire story, every twist, every heart-stopping moment, every secret revealed, hit that subscribe button right now. And here's the thing, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from, because tomorrow, I'm bringing you another story that's just as wild, just as unbelievable as this one. Trust me, you do not want to miss what happens next. Blood sprayed across the courtyard stones like violent graffiti. The guard's scream cut through the afternoon air. Raw, animal, desperate. Marco Salvetti, 23 years with the Torino family, 3 bullet scars across his torso, fear in no man's eyes, until today. Brutus's jaws locked deeper into his forearm, teeth grinding through muscle, hitting bone. The bulldog's scarred head thrashed side to side with mechanical precision, tearing flesh like wet paper. Get it off, Cristo, get it off. Marco's knees buckled. 2 soldiers rushed forward, weapons drawn, but hesitated. Kill the boss's dog? That's a death sentence worse than what Brutus could deliver. Casimir Torino watched from the second-story window, whiskey in hand, expression carved from marble. 48 years old, silver threading through his black hair, eyes the color of winter storms. He didn't move, didn't call out, just watched his guard bleed. Vex Corvallis appeared at Casimir's shoulder, jaw tight. Boss, that's the 3rd one this month. Marco's a good soldier. You want me to... No. Casimir's voice was smoke and gravel. Marco knew the rules. Nobody touches Brutus without permission. He was just bringing food. Brutus decides who's a threat. Casimir took another sip, ice clinking against crystal. Not my problem if Marco moved wrong. Below, the dog finally released. Marco collapsed, clutching his mangled arm while medics rushed in. Brutus retreated to his reinforced steel post, chain rattling, blood dripping from scarred jowls. The bulldog's amber eyes held no remorse. Only calculation, survival instincts honed in underground fighting rings where mercy meant death. Casimir had paid $50,000 for him 6 months ago, not as a pet, but as a mirror. The dog's previous owner, Dmitry Volkov, had bred Brutus for illegal fights across 3 states. When Dmitry tried moving heroin through Chicago without permission, Casimir eliminated him. Personally. 2 bullets. Clean. But when he'd found Brutus chained in that warehouse basement, ribs showing, covered in bite wounds and burn scars, something shifted in his chest. He saw himself. Damaged. Dangerous. Alone. Everyone said the dog was too far gone. Put it down, they'd urged. But Casimir kept him. Poured money into veterinary care, trainers, specialists. All failed. Brutus attacked 7 handlers, hospitalized 3 guards. Even Casimir maintained 10 feet of distance, communicating only through voice commands that worked maybe half the time. The dog trusted no one. Neither did Casimir. His mother had abandoned him at 9 years old. Left him at a train station with a note pinned to his coat, "I can't do this anymore." He'd survived foster homes, juvenile detention, the streets, built an empire from blood and brutality, made himself untouchable. Just like Brutus. Casimir's phone buzzed. Viktor Kovac. He ignored it. The Kovac family had been pushing territory boundaries for weeks, testing his attention. Let them wait. Let them wonder. Boss. Vex's voice carried warning. The Kovacs are getting bold. We need to respond. I know. Casimir's reflection stared back from the window glass. Hard lines, cold eyes, a face that had forgotten how to feel. Schedule a meeting. Make them understand boundaries. Below, Brutus circled his post 3 times and lay down, still alert, still deadly. The courtyard emptied fast. Nobody lingered near the beast. Casimir finished his whiskey and descended the stairs. He needed to inspect the Northside operations, collect debts, remind certain people that mercy wasn't in his vocabulary. But as he passed Brutus's post, the dog's eyes tracked him, not aggressive, just watching. 2 predators acknowledging each other. Nobody's coming for you, Casimir said quietly. Nobody's coming for me either. The dog's tail didn't wag. It never did. What neither of them knew, what neither could possibly predict, was that in 72 hours, everything would shatter. A tiny hand would reach through darkness and touch the untouchable. And the 2 most damaged souls in Chicago would meet the one person who could crack them both wide open. Thessaly Marin counted 17 steps from St. Catherine's Orphanage to the broken fence section behind the dumpsters. She'd memorized the route 3 weeks ago, waiting for the perfect moment. Today, Sister Merwin had arranged a field trip to Lincoln Park. 12 orphans. 2 chaperones. Too much chaos to notice one small girl slipping away. At 7 years old, Thessaly had learned that adults stopped seeing you if you stayed quiet enough. Became invisible. She was good at invisible. The city streets smelled like hot asphalt and fried food. Her stomach cramped. Lunch had been thin soup and stale bread. Again. She'd pocketed half her portion for later, wrapped in a napkin tucked inside her worn coat pocket. But that was gone now. Eaten an hour ago. Thessaly walked with purpose, head down, knowing that looking lost attracted attention. Her parents had taught her that before. She stopped that thought. Locked it away in the dark place where memories lived. Where Mama's laugh used to echo. Where Daddy's bedtime stories still whispered. Before the car crash. Before the police said it wasn't an accident. Before she understood words like organized crime and collateral damage. 3 years in the orphanage had taught her something crucial. Fear was a choice. She could be scared, or she could be brave. Only one option kept you alive. The black Mercedes sat alone in an alley behind Giancarlo's market. Windows cracked just enough to let air through. Thessaly spotted it from half a block away. Sleek, expensive, out of place. The kind of car that meant money. And money meant power. And power meant danger. She should have kept walking. Should have found a soup kitchen or a church. But through that narrow window gap, she heard something that stopped her cold. A sound. Low. Desperate. Animal. Whimpering. Thessaly approached slowly. Peered through the tinted glass. Her breath caught. A bulldog. Massive. Scarred. One ear torn, healed wrong. Burns across his shoulders. Eyes that held the kind of pain she recognized from her own mirror. Hey, she whispered. You're scared too, aren't you? The dog's head snapped toward her voice, lips pulled back, revealing teeth. A growl rumbled. Thunder before lightning. Any normal child would have run. Thessaly reached through the window gap. Her hand barely fit, but she stretched, fingers trembling, not from fear but from desperate understanding. This dog had been hurt. Just like her. Abandoned. Just like her. Surviving when survival felt impossible. It's okay, she breathed. I know what it's like. When they take everything. Brutus lunged, jaws wide, murder in his eyes. His breath was hot against her wrist. One bite would shatter bones. End her. But Thessaly didn't pull back. She closed her eyes and whispered the words her mother used to say. You're safe now, I promise. You're safe. The dog froze. Completely still. His nose touched her palm, sniffing, processing information his brain couldn't compute. This small human smelled like sadness and breadcrumbs and something else. Something pure, genuine, unafraid in a way that bypassed all his defensive programming. Brutus's scarred head lowered. Slowly, carefully, he pressed his massive skull into her tiny hand. His eyes closed, and for the first time in 6 months, the beast that savaged grown men went completely, impossibly silent. Thessaly opened her eyes and smiled, small, genuine, cracking through months of orphanage numbness. "Good boy," she whispered. "You're a good boy." Behind her, car doors slammed. Voices shouted. Thessaly turned to see men in expensive suits running toward her, weapons half-drawn, faces twisted in panic. And walking through them like Moses parting the Red Sea came a man who made the air itself feel colder. Tall, silver-streaked black hair, eyes like winter storms, a face carved from violence and control. Casimir Torino stopped 3 feet away, staring at the impossible scene before him. This child, filthy, thin, fearless, had her hand inside his car, touching his untouchable dog. And Brutus was relaxed, trusting, transformed. "Step away from the vehicle," Casimir said, keeping his voice level despite the chaos rioting through his chest. Slowly, Thessaly pulled her hand back and turned to face him fully. She tilted her head, studying him with an intensity that made him feel exposed, like she could see past the expensive suit, past the reputation, straight down to the parts of himself he'd buried under concrete and cruelty. "Your dog was lonely," she said simply. "He needed a friend." Casimir's carefully constructed world tilted on its axis. This child had done in seconds what he couldn't accomplish in 6 months. She'd reached something in that animal, in himself, that he'd believed was unreachable. "What's your name?" His voice came out rougher than intended. "Thessaly Marin." "I'm 7." She paused. "What's yours?" Nobody asked Casimir Torino his name. They either knew it or they were about to learn it the hard way. But this child asked like they were equals. Like his reputation meant nothing. "Casimir." He glanced at Brutus, who was watching Thessaly through the window like she'd hung the moon. "How did you do that?" Thessaly shrugged, small shoulders lifting. "I just understood him. Sometimes the scariest things are just scared things pretending to be strong." Something cracked inside Casimir's chest, something he thought had died 39 years ago at a train station. He cleared his throat, pushing back against the unwelcome emotion. "Where are your parents?" "Dead." She said it matter of fact, practiced, no tears, just truth. "I live at St. Catherine's now. It's okay. Sister Merwin says I'm resilient." Casimir recognized that tone, that forced brightness. He'd perfected it himself once, before he stopped pretending to be anything but dangerous. A crowd was forming, phones appearing, witnesses, complications. He needed to move. "Get in." He opened the passenger door. "I'm taking you back to the orphanage." Thessaly climbed in without hesitation. Brutus immediately pushed his head between the seats, demanding her attention. She laughed, genuinely laughed, and scratched behind his torn ear. Casimir slid behind the wheel and pulled out of the alley, hyper-aware of the small person. In his passenger seat, and the impossible warmth filling his cold, controlled world. This was dangerous. Attachments were liabilities. Caring meant vulnerability. He should drop her off and forget this ever happened. But as Thessaly whispered to Brutus and the dog made sounds he'd never heard, before, content, peaceful sounds, Casimir realized something terrifying. His life had just changed, and there wasn't a damn thing he could do to stop it. The drive to St. Catherine's should have taken 12 minutes. Casimir stretched it to 30, taking side streets he didn't need, slowing at yellow lights he'd normally run. Anything to delay the moment when this strange, unsettling warmth would end. Thessaly sat with both hands buried in Brutus's fur, the dog's massive head resting contentedly in her lap. She hummed something, a melody Casimir half recognized but couldn't place. Lullaby, maybe. Something mothers sang. "Why don't you smile?" Thessaly asked suddenly, those 2 old eyes studying his profile. Casimir's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I smile." "No, you don't. Not really. Your mouth moves sometimes, but your eyes stay sad. She tilted her head, like Sister Merwen when she thinks we're not watching. She lost someone too. I haven't lost anyone. The lie tasted bitter. Yes, you have. Thessaly's voice held absolute certainty. Everyone who looks like you lost somebody important. It's in your shoulders. How they're always tight, like you're waiting to get hit. Casimir's breath caught. 7 years old, and she read people like he read ledgers. Saw through armor it took him decades to build. He should have been annoyed, should have shut down this invasive questioning. Instead, something cracked wider inside his chest. You ask a lot of questions, he said carefully. You don't answer a lot of them. Thessaly scratched Brutus behind his mangled ear. The dog groaned with pleasure. Don't you have a family? Someone waiting at home? The question hit like a blade between ribs. Casimir's mother's face flashed through his mind, younger, tired, desperate. The train station. The note? I can't do this anymore. 9 years old, abandoned, learning that love was just another word for eventual betrayal. No, the word came out harder than intended. I don't. Why not? Because family is a liability in my line of work. Professional distance. That's what he needed. Rebuild the walls this child somehow breached. What do you do? I manage business interests. The sanitized version. How do you explain empire building through intimidation and strategic violence to a 7-year-old? You're lonely. Not a question. A diagnosis. Thessaly leaned forward, small hand reaching out to touch his scarred knuckles on the steering wheel. Her fingers were tiny, warm, impossibly gentle. Being alone isn't the same as being strong. Daddy used to say that. Before, she stopped, swallowed hard. Casimir saw her rebuild her own walls in real time, recognizing the architecture because he designed the same blueprint. Before what? His voice softened despite himself. Before the bad men crashed our car. They said it was an accident, but I heard the police talking. They said it was organized crime, that someone wanted to hurt someone else, and my parents were just there. Her thumb traced the scars on his knuckles, old wounds from bare-knuckle enforcement jobs decades ago. Sister Merwen thinks I don't understand, but I do. I understand that scared people hurt other people, and hurt people either get smaller or scarier. Casimir's vision blurred. He blinked hard, shocked to find moisture in his eyes. When was the last time he'd cried? 15? 20 years ago? He couldn't remember. Didn't allow himself to remember. Which one are you? He asked hoarsely. Smaller or scarier? Thessaly smiled, sad, knowing, heartbreaking. I'm trying to be braver. That's different. Being brave means doing good things even when you're scared. Even when it's easier to be mean or hide. She squeezed his hand. You could be brave too. If you wanted. The Mercedes swerved slightly. Casimir corrected, heart hammering against his ribs like it was trying to escape. This child, this impossibly wise, damaged, fearless child, had just articulated something he'd spent 39 years running from. He'd chosen scary, built an empire on being the most dangerous man in the room, used fear as currency and violence as vocabulary, told himself it was strength, survival, necessary. But sitting here with Thessaly's small hand on his, Brutus purring like a massive cat, something fundamental shifted in his understanding. He wasn't strong. He was terrified. Had been since that train station, since learning that everyone leaves, everything breaks, and trust was just pre-packaged betrayal. I don't know how, Casimir admitted quietly. The confession felt like pulling shrapnel from an old wound. I've been this for too long. That's okay. Thessaly's voice carried impossible compassion. Brutus forgot how to be good too, but he remembered when someone showed him it was safe. Maybe you just need someone to show you. Casimir pulled up to St. Catherine's, weathered brick building, crucifix above the door, playground with rusted swings. A place where thrown-away children learned to survive. He should have put the car in park, walked her to the door, driven away, and never looked back. Instead, he sat frozen, engine idling, watching this tiny girl who'd somehow reached, past every defense he'd constructed, and touched something he thought had died. Thessaly, he started, not knowing how to finish. She unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned over to hug Brutus. The dog whimpered, actual distress at her leaving. Then she turned to Casimir, studying his face with that unnerving intensity. "You'll come back," she said with complete certainty. "I know you will." "How do you know?" "Because you're not finished being brave yet, and neither am I." She opened the door, then paused. "Also, Brutus likes me. And I think maybe you do too." She disappeared into the orphanage before Casimir could respond. He sat in the car for 17 minutes, unable to move, unable to process what just happened. Brutus whined, pawing at the window where Thessaly had been. "I know," Casimir whispered to his dog. To himself. "I know." His phone buzzed. "Vex, Kovac shipment, moving through Red District tonight. Need your call." Business. Territory. The empire that demanded constant feeding with blood and fear, but as Casimir drove toward his office, he couldn't stop seeing Thessaly's face, couldn't stop hearing her voice. Being brave means doing good things even when you're scared. 3 blocks from his building, he passed an alley where 2 of his soldiers were beating information from a low-level dealer. Standard operation, necessary intimidation. He'd ordered it himself yesterday. He told his driver to stop, got out, walked into that alley and said 2 words that shocked everyone. Let him go. It was a small thing, meaningless in the grand calculation of his empire. But driving away, Casimir felt something he hadn't experienced in decades. Hope. Terrifying, dangerous, impossible hope. And 30 miles away, hidden in a surveillance van, a Kovac lieutenant lowered his camera, studying the photos he'd just taken. The infamous Casimir Torino with a little girl, smiling, vulnerable. Finally, they'd found his weakness. If this story resonated with you, then hit that subscribe button right now. And do me a favor, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Because tomorrow, I'm bringing you another story that's just as wild, just as unbelievable as this one. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. 5 days. Casimir lasted 5 days before returning to St. Catherine's. Told himself he needed to check on the orphanage's security. The neighborhood was deteriorating, gang activity increasing, vulnerable children at risk. Logical. Professional. Absolutely nothing to do with a 7-year-old girl who'd cracked his armor. Brutus knew better. The dog had been impossible since that afternoon, refusing food, ignoring commands, sitting by the car door whining. Casimir finally admitted defeat. "Fine," he told Brutus Thursday morning. "We'll visit. But this is a one-time thing. We're not." The dog's tail wagged. First time in 6 months. Sister Merwin answered the door. 60s, steel-gray hair, eyes that had seen too much suffering to be fooled by expensive suits. She studied Casimir like he was a test she hadn't decided whether he'd pass. "Mr. Torino," not a greeting. An assessment. "Thessaly mentioned you, said you had sad shoulders and a good heart hiding. I told her not to trust strange men in black Mercedes, but she insisted you were different. I came to discuss security improvements for the orphanage." The lie felt heavier than usual. "This neighborhood has dangerous elements." Sister Merwen's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. "The most dangerous element in this neighborhood just walked through my door carrying a dog leash. But please, enlighten me about security." Before Casimir could respond, a shriek echoed from the courtyard. His hand moved instinctively toward his concealed weapon. 30 years of survival instinct. But Sister Merwin just sighed. "That would be Thessaly discovering you're here. She's been watching the street since Tuesday." The courtyard door burst open. Thessaly ran full speed, dirt on her knees, hair escaping its ponytail, face lit with pure joy. She hit Casimir's legs like a small missile, wrapping arms around him before he could process what was happening. "You came back. I knew you would. I told Marcus, he's 8. I told him you'd come back and he said I was stupid because rich people don't care about orphans, but I knew he was wrong and I was right and you brought Brutus." The words tumbled out in one breath. Casimir stood frozen, unsure where to put his hands, overwhelmed by the contact. When was the last time someone hugged him without ulterior motive? Without fear? Or calculation? Or agenda? Brutus solved the problem by pushing between them, demanding Thessaly's attention. She dropped to her knees, burying her face in scarred fur, laughing as the dog licked her face with surprising gentleness. Other children appeared, curious faces in the doorway, wary but drawn by the massive dog. Casimir recognized their expressions. Same look he'd worn at their age? Abandoned. Cautious? Expecting disappointment. "Can they pet him?" Thessaly asked, already knowing the answer somehow. Casimir should have said no. Brutus was dangerous, unpredictable, one wrong move from reverting to the fighting pit animal he'd been. But watching the dog lean into Thessaly's touch, tail wagging steadily, something shifted. Slowly, Casimir instructed. "Let him smell your hand first. No sudden movements." 8 orphans formed a nervous line. Thessaly coached each one. "He's scared too, see? So be gentle. Show him you're safe." Brutus accepted each small hand with surprising patience, occasionally licking fingers, causing delighted giggles. Casimir watched, feeling alien emotions crawl through his chest. Warmth, protectiveness, something dangerously close to contentment. He'd built an empire on being untouchable. This felt like touching everything. His phone vibrated. Vex, Kovac soldiers spotted near North Side warehouse. Moving product through your territory. Need response. Reality crashed back. The empire didn't pause for sentimentality. Rivals smelled weakness, like sharks smelled blood. He'd been distracted lately. Missed meetings, delayed decisions, hesitated when he should have acted. The Kovac family was testing boundaries, and his lack of immediate retaliation signaled vulnerability. "I have to go," Casimir said abruptly. Thessaly's face fell. "Business. Will you come back?" Her voice carried carefully controlled hope. Expecting disappointment but asking anyway. Casimir looked at this child who'd somehow become important, who made Brutus wag his tail and made Casimir's chest ache with unfamiliar feelings. Logic said, walk away. Attachments were liabilities. Caring meant leverage for enemies. But watching Thessaly try to hide her disappointment, shoulders pulling inward, face rearranging into practiced indifference, the same armor he wore, Casimir couldn't do it. "Saturday," he heard himself say. "I'll bring Brutus Saturday afternoon. I'll teach you both some proper commands. Training." Thessaly's smile could have powered the entire city. "Promise? I don't break promises." True statement. Casimir kept his word because reputation mattered. But this felt different. This felt like the promise actually mattered beyond strategic calculation. Driving away, Brutus whining in the back seat, Casimir tried to analyze what he'd just done. He'd committed to returning, created a pattern, given enemies a predictable schedule if they were watching. And they were always watching. His phone rang. Vex. "Boss, we need to move on the Kovac situation. They hit another shipment. Took 30 grand worth of product. This is escalation. Set up a meeting with Dragon." Casimir's voice went cold, professional. The man who petted dogs with orphans disappeared. The predator returned. Neutral ground. Make it clear we're discussing boundaries. And if he refuses to respect them? Casimir thought about Thessaly's words. Being brave means doing good things even when you're scared. But she didn't understand his world. In his business, mercy was suicide. Hesitation meant death. Then we remind him why people fear the Torino name. Back to familiar ground. Violence as vocabulary. Permanently, he ended the call and stared at the city streets. 2 worlds colliding. One built on fear and blood. One offering something he'd stopped believing existed. Brutus rested his scarred head on Casimir's shoulder from the back seat. The dog had survived fighting pits by being vicious, had earned his scars through brutality. But with Thessaly, he'd remembered something else, something softer. "We're both in trouble," Casimir told his dog. "You know that, right?" Brutus's tail thumped once. Agreement. That night, Casimir reviewed security footage from the orphanage neighborhood, checking for threats, protecting his, what? Investment? Responsibility? He didn't have language for what Thessaly was becoming. The footage showed a dark sedan, Kovac plates, circling St. Catherine's twice, just surveillance probably, gathering information. But Casimir's blood ran ice cold. They'd noticed. His enemies had noticed his interest. He made 7 phone calls. By morning, 20 of his most trusted soldiers would be positioned throughout that neighborhood. Invisible protection. Nobody would touch that orphanage. Nobody would get near those children. Near Thessaly. He was building weakness into his armor, creating vulnerabilities. His underboss would call it strategic suicide. His enemies would call it opportunity. But remembering Thessaly's hug, Brutus's tail wag, that unfamiliar warmth in his chest, Casimir couldn't seem to care about the tactical disadvantage. For the first time in 39 years, something mattered more than survival. And that terrified him more than any bullet ever could. The warehouse exploded at 2:47 a.m. Casimir felt the shock wave through his office windows 3 miles away. A deep rumble that rattled glass and set off car alarms across 2 blocks. He was on his feet before the second explosion hit. Phone already dialing, gun already in hand. Northside storage facility. Vex's voice came through tight, controlled. Kovac soldiers, at least 12. They're not stealing this time, boss. They're sending a message. I'm on my way. Casimir grabbed his jacket, checked his ankle holster. Casualties? 3 of ours down. Mikey's critical. They came heavy, automatic weapons, incendiaries. This is war. The drive took 8 minutes. Casimir pushed the Mercedes to dangerous speeds, running red lights, his mind calculating strategy while his blood sang with familiar rage. This, he understood. Violence. Retaliation. The language he'd spoken fluently for decades. The warehouse district glowed orange against the night sky. Flames consumed the building. $800,000 worth of imported electronics, strategic shipments, carefully built supply chains. But Casimir barely registered the financial loss. His eyes tracked the tactical situation. 7 bodies on the ground, 4 Kovac soldiers, 3 of his own men. Sirens approaching, police, fire department, witnesses with phones filming everything. Dragan Kovac himself stood in the center of the chaos, flanked by 8 armed men. 55 years old, Belgrade accent still thick despite 30 years in Chicago, scar running from temple to jaw. He smiled when Casimir approached. Torino, you finally show up to your own funeral. Dragan gestured at the burning warehouse. Consider this tuition. You're learning what happens when you get soft. When you spend your time with orphans, instead of watching your territory. Casimir's expression stayed frozen. But inside, ice spread through his veins. They knew, not just about the orphanage. They'd been watching, analyzing, identifying his new weakness. You've made a mistake, Casimir said quietly. Dangerous quiet. The tone that preceded body counts. Have the first? Dragan laughed. I've watched you, Casimir, the great Torino, the untouchable predator. But something changed. You're distracted, hesitating. Your soldiers notice. Your rivals notice. He stepped closer, breath reeking of cigars and arrogance. There's blood in the water, and everyone can smell it. Last warning, back off. Or what? You'll have your little orphan girl pray for me? Dragan's smile turned vicious. Yes, we know about her. Thessaly, pretty name. Would be a shame if... Casimir moved. 3 steps. 1 smooth motion. His fist connected with Dragan's throat. Precise, brutal, calculated to damage without killing. The older man dropped, gasping, clawing at his crushed windpipe. Casimir's gun cleared leather, barrel pressed against Dragan's forehead before his guards could react. Touch her, Casimir whispered, and I will erase your entire bloodline. Every cousin, every nephew, every person who shares your name. I will make it slow, creative, educational. He cocked the hammer. Do we understand each other? Dragan managed a strangled nod. Casimir released him, standing smoothly, his own soldiers materializing from shadows with weapons ready. Mexican standoff. 12 guns on each side. Sirens getting closer. "This isn't over," Dragon rasped, being pulled back by his men. "No," Casimir agreed coldly. "It's just beginning." The Kovac soldiers retreated. Casimir stood watching the warehouse burn, adrenaline slowly draining, replaced by something worse. Fear. Not for himself. He'd stopped fearing death decades ago. But for Thessaly. For the children at St. Catherine's. For the vulnerability he'd created by caring. Vex approached, blood on his shirt. Mikey didn't make it. Bled out before the ambulance arrived. Casimir nodded, filing that information with all the other deaths he carried. Young kid. 23. Had a sister in Milwaukee. Casimir would send money. Anonymous envelope. Standard procedure. Boss. Vex's voice dropped. They mentioned the girl. That's not just intelligence gathering. That's threat assessment. They're planning something. I know. Casimir watched flames consume metal and concrete, seeing different possibilities burning. Triple security around St. Catherine's. I want eyes on every entrance, every alley, every rooftop with sightlines. Anyone suspicious gets questioned. That's 20 soldiers minimum, full time. It'll leave gaps in our... I don't care about the gaps. Casimir's voice could have cut glass. Do it. The drive home took forever. Casimir's hands shook on the steering wheel, delayed adrenaline crash mixed with unfamiliar terror. He'd executed 17 men in his career. Personally, up close. Watched life leave their eyes without blinking. But thinking about Dragon's threat against Thessaly made his stomach twist with nausea. This was why attachments were dangerous. Why caring was suicide. He'd known it intellectually, but feeling it, experiencing the visceral fear of losing something precious, was different. Worse. Unbearable. He should cut ties. Ghost the orphanage. Let Thessaly forget him. It would hurt her, but briefly. Children were resilient. She'd survive. And he'd go back to being untouchable, invulnerable, safe. Brutus whined from the back seat, somehow sensing his turmoil. I know, Casimir muttered. But we don't have a choice. This is for her protection. The dog whined louder. Disagreement. Casimir made it home at 4:30 a.m., showered, changed, tried to sleep. Failed. At 6:15, he gave up and went to his study, pouring whiskey he didn't want, staring at city lights that held no answers. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Casimir answered warily. Mr. Torino? Sister Merwen's voice. I apologize for the early call, but Thessaly had nightmares last night. Kept saying something bad was coming. I don't know if you believe in such things, but she's rarely wrong. And she asked me to call you. Said you needed to know. Casimir's throat tightened. Tell her I'll be there Saturday. As promised, Mr. Torino. Sister Merwen's tone sharpened. Whatever world you inhabit, whatever business you conduct, I've been running this orphanage for 37 years. I know dangerous men. I know violence. And I know when a child has accidentally stepped into someone's crosshairs. Pause. Is Thessaly in danger because of you? Honest answer, yes. Absolutely. Undeniably. But Casimir couldn't force the word past his teeth. I've arranged protection, he said instead. Your neighborhood, the orphanage. Nobody will get near those children. That's not what I asked. It's the only answer I have. Casimir ended the call before she could push further. Saturday afternoon, he returned as promised. Thessaly ran to meet him, but stopped 3 feet away, studying his face with that unnerving perception. Something bad happened, she said quietly. Not a question. Nothing you need to worry about. You're lying. Your jaw does this thing when you lie. She stepped closer, taking his scarred hand in both of hers. It's okay to be scared. I get scared too. But we're braver together, remember? Casimir knelt, bringing himself to eye level with this impossibly wise child. Thessaly, I need to ask you something. If I stopped visiting, if it was safer for you if I stayed away, would you understand? Her eyes filled with tears, she refused to let fall. You're leaving? I'm trying to protect you by leaving? Her voice cracked. Everyone protects me by leaving. Mama and Daddy left. My foster families left. Sister Ruth left because she got sick. And now you're leaving too. She pulled her hands back, rebuilding familiar walls. It's fine. I'm used to it. The devastation in her voice shattered something in Casimir's chest. He pulled her into a hug. Awkward, unpracticed, desperately sincere. I'm not leaving, he heard himself say, making promises he shouldn't, creating vulnerabilities he couldn't afford. I'm not leaving you, ever. Thessaly sobbed into his shoulder, while Brutus pressed against them both. And Casimir realized with perfect, terrifying clarity he'd already lost this battle. He couldn't walk away, couldn't protect her by disappearing. He'd just have to protect her by becoming more dangerous than anything that threatened her. Even if it cost him everything he'd built. Even if it cost him his life. Thessaly stopped crying after 3 minutes. Casimir counted, old habit, timing emotional displays to gauge manipulation versus genuine distress. But this was real. Raw. She clung to him like he was the last solid thing in a collapsing world, and something in his chest rearranged itself permanently. When she finally pulled back, wiping her nose on her sleeve, she looked embarrassed. Sorry. Sister Merwan says, I'm too emotional. You're allowed to feel things. Casimir kept his voice gentle, channeling patience he'd never known he possessed. That's not weakness. You don't feel things. She studied him with those 2 old eyes. At least you pretend not to. I'm trying to learn truth. Strange, uncomfortable truth. You're teaching me. Thessaly smiled. Small, genuine, heartbreaking. Then she grabbed his hand. Come on. I want to show you something. She led him through the orphanage corridors. Peeling paint, crucifixes on walls, the faint smell of institutional cooking. Other children watched from doorways, curious, cautious. Thessaly's room was at the end of the hall. Shared space. 4 beds. Minimal personal belongings. She pulled a shoebox from under her mattress, settling cross-legged on threadbare carpet. Brutus lay beside her, head in her lap. Casimir sat more carefully, expensive suit incongruous against the worn surroundings. This is everything I have left. Thessaly opened the box. Photographs, a bracelet, a stuffed rabbit with 1 ear. From before, the photographs showed a happy family, mother with kind eyes, father with Thessaly's same dark hair, different life, different world. All of them smiling like the future held only good things. They look like wonderful people, Casimir said quietly. They were. Thessaly traced her mother's face. Mama taught kindergarten. Daddy fixed cars. We weren't rich, but we were happy. Her finger stopped moving until the bad men came. Casimir's investigative instincts activated. What bad men? I don't know their names. I was 4 when it happened. But I remember pieces. Mama and Daddy fighting about money someone wanted. Daddy saying he wouldn't get involved, that we'd leave Chicago if we had to. Then the car crash. She looked up, eyes dark with knowledge no 7-year-old should carry. Police said the brakes were cut, that it was organized crime, that my parents were collateral damage. Ice spread through Casimir's veins. Collateral damage in what? I don't know exactly. But I heard detectives talking when they thought I couldn't hear. Something about territory disputes, drug shipments, someone refusing to pay protection money. She pulled out a newspaper clipping, yellowed, carefully preserved. I keep this. To remember. Casimir took the clipping with hands that didn't quite steady. Chicago Tribune. 3 years ago. Local couple dies in suspected mob hit. Automotive worker and teacher leave behind daughter. The article was sparse. Daniel and Rebecca Marin. Good people. Wrong place. Caught in crossfire between criminal organizations fighting over a 6-block territory. No arrests made. Case gone cold. Casimir's mind raced, accessing memory files. 3 years ago, he'd been consolidating North Side operations. The Albanians had been pushing back. There'd been incidents, collateral damage, people who refused to cooperate or got caught in escalating violence. Had he ordered this? Not specifically, but his organization's actions, his territorial expansion, his wars, they created casualties. Innocent casualties. People like Daniel and Rebecca Marin who just wanted to live their lives. People like Thessaly's parents. Nausea rolled through Casimir's stomach. He might have killed this child's family. Maybe not directly. Maybe not intentionally. But his empire ran on blood, and not all of it belonged to criminals. Mr. Casimir. Thessaly's voice pulled him back. Are you okay? You look sick. I'm fine. Another lie. His jaw clenched. She'd notice. Thessaly, I need to tell you something about my work. I know what you do. She said it simply, no judgment, just fact. You're like the bad men who took my parents. Maybe not exactly the same, but similar. You do dangerous things, scary things. Casimir's world tilted. Then why? Because you're trying to be different. She leaned forward, small hands on his knees. I can tell. You're scared of caring about me because you think it makes you weak. But really it makes you braver. Because now you have to choose. Keep being scary. Or start being good. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Thessaly's voice carried absolute conviction. Every day we choose. Mama used to say that. Before she died, she told me, Tessie, bad things will happen. Bad people will try to make you scared or mean. But you get to choose who you become. Choose brave. Choose kind. Even when it's hard. Tears tracked down her cheeks now. But she didn't stop. I choose brave every single day. When bigger kids steal my food. When I have nightmares. When everyone leaves. I choose brave. She squeezed his knees. You can too. I know you can. Because you already started. You came back. You kept your promise. That's brave. Casimir couldn't breathe. This child, this damaged, brilliant, fearless child, was offering him redemption he didn't deserve. Forgiveness for sins she didn't even know he'd committed. Seeing potential for good in a man who'd built his empire on brutality. Thessaly! His voice cracked. What if I've done terrible things? What if I'm not capable of being the person you think I am? Everyone's capable. She smiled through tears. Brutus was a fighting dog. People hurt him, made him mean. But he remembered how to be gentle when someone showed him love. You're the same. She pulled out a final item from the box. Folded paper, carefully smoothed. She handed it to Casimir. I drew this. For you. He unfolded it with shaking hands. Crayon drawing. Simple. Powerful. 3 figures, a man, a girl, and a dog, standing together. Underneath, in careful child's handwriting, my new family. The tears Casimir had locked away for 39 years broke free. Silent. Unstoppable. Running down his face while this 7-year-old girl who'd lost everything offered him something he'd stopped believing existed. A second chance. A family. A reason to be better than the monster he'd become. I don't know how to be a father, he whispered. I don't know how to have one anymore, Thessaly whispered back. But we can learn together. She climbed into his lap, trusting, fearless, choosing him despite everything. Brutus pressed against them both. And in that shabby orphanage room, surrounded by ghosts of violence and loss, something impossible happened. Casimir Torino, the most feared mafia boss in Chicago, found something worth protecting more than his empire. He found a reason to become someone new. Thessaly! He held her carefully, like she might break. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. But I promise I will protect you. I will try to be better. And I will never, ever leave you. That's all I need. She hugged him tighter. That's all anyone needs. Outside, one of Casimir's soldiers watched the orphanage entrance. Trained. Alert. Professional. He didn't notice the dark sedan 3 blocks away. Didn't see the telephoto lens capturing images through the window. Dragan Kovac reviewed the photos on his phone, smile spreading slowly. Casimir Torino wasn't just distracted. He was invested. Emotionally compromised. vulnerable. Finally, after 15 years of territorial battles and failed assassination attempts, they'd found the weapon that could destroy him. A 7-year-old girl with crayon drawings and too much trust. Dragan made a phone call. Assemble the team. We move in 72 hours. The war was about to escalate, and Thessaly Marin had just become the most valuable target in Chicago. Listen, if you're already hooked on today's story, and you can't wait to hear what happens, and I know you can't wait because this one is wild, then do these 2 things right now: like and subscribe so you catch tomorrow's equally amazing story. Tuesday afternoon, 3:47 p.m. Thessaly was on the playground swing when the world exploded into chaos. She'd been singing some half-remembered song her mother used to hum while making breakfast. The sky was that particular autumn gold, leaves swirling, other children laughing nearby. Sister Merwen was helping a younger boy with his shoelaces. Normal, safe, routine. Then the black van screeched into the parking lot. Everything happened in seconds. 4 men, ski masks, moving with military precision. One of Casimir's soldiers, Marcus, who'd brought her candy yesterday, stepped forward, hand reaching for his weapon. The suppressed gunshot was barely louder than a cough. Marcus dropped, blood spreading across his chest, eyes wide with shock. Thessaly opened her mouth to scream. A gloved hand clamped over her face. Chemical smell, bitter taste. The world tilted sideways. Strong arms lifted her. She kicked, tried to bite, but her muscles weren't responding right. Everything blurred. Sister Merwen's scream, children crying, another gunshot, the second guard, Tony, trying to reach her. He went down hard, clutching his leg. Blood on the pavement. So much blood. Thessaly's vision tunneled. The van interior, rough hands binding her wrists with zip ties, duct tape across her mouth. Someone's phone camera pointing at her face. A voice, accented, cold, smile for your new daddy, little girl. Let's show him what happens when Torino gets soft. Then darkness. Complete, consuming. She fought against it, tried to remember Mama's words about choosing brave, but the chemical haze dragged her under. She woke in concrete darkness. Basement, damp smell. Single bulb hanging overhead. Her head pounded. Wrists zip-tied to a metal chair. Tape still across her mouth, making breathing difficult through her nose. Thessaly forced down panic. Counted her breaths like Sister Merwen taught her for nightmares. 1, 2, 3. Stay calm. Think. Survive. Footsteps on stairs. A man descended. Older. Scar across his face. Eyes like winter ice. He pulled up a chair, sitting too close. Thessaly Marin. He said her name like he owned it. Age 7, orphan, no family, nobody who'll miss you except one very unfortunate mafia boss. He leaned forward. Do you know who I am? She shook her head. Couldn't speak through the tape. Dragan Kovac. And you, little girl, are about to help me destroy Casimir Torino? He pulled out his phone, started recording. Now we're going to make a video. You're going to look scared. Shouldn't be hard, you should be terrified. And your protector is going to have a choice, his empire or your life. Dragan ripped the tape from her mouth. Thessaly gasped, eyes watering from pain. Please, she whispered. Playing the part. Buying time. Please. I just want to go home. Perfect. Dragan smiled. Keep that energy. He recorded 90 seconds. Thessaly bound, crying, begging. Then he sent it. Thessaly heard the phone send confirmation and knew, somewhere in Chicago, Casimir's world was shattering. Now we wait, Dragan said, standing. Your father figure has 24 hours to decide what matters more. Power or you. I'm betting he chooses power. Men like us always do. You're wrong, Thessaly's voice steadied. He'll come. And when he does, I'll kill him in front of you. Then I'll kill you. Then I'll take everything he built. Dragan headed for the stairs. But please, keep hoping. It makes the inevitable disappointment more delicious. He left. The door locked. Darkness pressed in. Thessaly pulled against the zip ties. Too tight. Professional. But the chair was old metal, slightly rusted where her wrists attached. She twisted, ignoring the pain as plastic cut into her skin. Blood made things slippery. Maybe if she could... Footsteps again. Different person. Younger guard. Nervous eyes. He brought water, held the bottle to her lips. "I'm sorry," he muttered. "This isn't... I didn't sign up for kidnapping kids, but Dragon, he..." The guard shook his head. "Just drink." Thessaly drank, then looked at him. Really looked. "What's your name?" "Doesn't matter." "It matters to me. My name's Thessaly. If you're going to guard me, we should at least know each other's names." He hesitated. "Pavel." "Pavel." She smiled. Small, genuine. The same smile that had tamed Brutus. "You have kind eyes. You don't want to hurt me. I can tell. Doesn't matter what I want. Dragon's orders... Orders aren't the same as choices." Thessaly kept her voice gentle. "My mama used to say everyone gets to choose. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." She paused. "Is this who you choose to be? Someone who hurts kids?" Pavel's face twisted with conflict. "You don't understand. You cross Dragon, you're dead. Your whole family's dead. There's no walking away. There's always a choice." Thessaly leaned forward as much as the restraints allowed. "Casimir's coming. When he does, there's going to be violence. Bad violence. You could die, or you could choose different. Choose brave." "You sound like a fortune cookie." But Pavel's voice wavered. "I sound like someone who survived bad men taking my parents, who chose to keep being good even when the world was awful." Tears rolled down Thessaly's cheeks now, real, exhausted. "Please. You have kind eyes. Don't let them turn cruel." Pavel stood abruptly. "I can't. I'm sorry, I can't." He left. But he didn't lock the door completely. Thessaly heard the click, incomplete, uncertain. A crack of possibility. Hours passed. Thessaly worked the zip ties. Twisted, pulled. Her wrists were slick with blood, screaming with pain, but the plastic stretched microscopically. The chair's rust helped, rough surface, providing friction. She thought about Casimir, about Brutus, about the drawing she'd made of their family. She thought about her parents, about choosing brave, about how the scariest moments were when you discovered what you were made of. Upstairs, voices, argument, Dragon shouting, Torino accepted the terms. He's coming alone, unarmed, surrendering everything. The idiot actually cares about the brat. Laughter. Cruel, confident. The sound of men who thought they'd already won. Thessaly pulled harder. The plastic gave. Just millimeters. But millimeters meant possibility. "I'm choosing brave," she whispered to the darkness, to her dead parents, to herself. "I'm choosing brave, and I'm not giving up." The zip tie stretched another fraction. Her right hand, slick with blood, compressed. Pulled. Almost. A car engine outside. Multiple vehicles. Thessaly froze, listening. Casimir had arrived. The war was about to begin. And somewhere in this nightmare, a 7-year-old girl with her mother's courage and her father's determination decided she wasn't waiting to be rescued. She was going to save herself. And maybe, just maybe, save Casimir too. Chapter 8. The Impossible Choice. Casimir arrived at the abandoned warehouse at exactly midnight. Alone. Unarmed. Surrendering everything he'd built for 30 years for one 7-year-old girl who'd taught his dog to trust again. The docks stretched dark and empty around him. Water lapped against rotting piers. This place had seen bodies before, would see more tonight. The mathematics of violence were simple here. Brutal. Final. Vex had argued for 3 hours. "Boss, it's a trap. Dragon's not honoring any deal. You walk in there, you're dead. Let me bring the whole crew. We storm the place. Extract the girl. And she dies in the crossfire." Casimir had checked his weapons one final time, then left them on his desk. All of them. "This is the only way." "Then let me come with you. At least give yourself backup." "No." Casimir's voice had been final. He wants me. If I bring soldiers, he kills Thessaly out of spite. This ends with me. Now, standing in the warehouse yard, Casimir faced the truth he'd been avoiding. He was going to die tonight. Dragan would take his surrender, execute him, probably kill Thessaly anyway. The empire would crumble. Everything he'd built would scatter to rivals and opportunists. And he didn't care. Not about the empire. Not about legacy. Only about the slight chance that his death might buy Thessaly's freedom. Touching. Dragan's voice echoed from the warehouse entrance. 12 armed men materialized from shadows, weapons trained on Casimir. The great Torino, brought to his knees by a child. I'd call it poetic if it wasn't so pathetic. Casimir kept his hands visible. Empty, surrendering. Let her go. That was the deal. The deal. Dragan laughed, walking closer. You think I make deals with the man who's been bleeding my operations for 15 years? Who executed my cousin Dmitri? Who cost me 3 million in lost territory? He gestured to his soldiers. Search him. Rough hands patted Casimir down. Found nothing. The soldiers exchanged confused looks. Everyone knew Torino never went anywhere unarmed. But tonight, he'd chosen differently. Chosen vulnerable. Where is she? Casimir's voice stayed level despite the terror shredding his insides. Safe, terrified, crying for her new daddy. Dragan smiled. It was almost sad how much she believes in you. Kept saying you'd come, you'd save her, you'd choose brave. He mocked Thessaly's voice. Sweet kid. Wrong about everything. Casimir's hands clenched. Every instinct screamed to attack, to kill, to unleash decades of practiced violence. But 13 weapons. Thessaly somewhere inside, probably already dead. He forced control. I surrendered. I came alone. Honor the terms. Honor. Dragan tasted the word. From Casimir Torino, the man who's built his empire on broken promises and buried bodies. He stepped close enough, Casimir could smell his cologne. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign documents transferring all your operations. Every territory, every business, every asset. Then I'm going to put a bullet in your head. Then I'm going to kill that little girl who made you weak. And by morning, the Torino name will be a cautionary tale. She's innocent. Casimir kept his voice flat. Negotiating, she has no part in this. Let her go, kill me, take everything. But let her walk away. Where's the lesson in that? Dragan pulled out his phone, showed Casimir the screen. Live feed. Thessaly bound in a basement, blood on her wrists. Terror in her eyes. She's your weakness. Weakness deserves to die. Something snapped in Casimir's chest. Not anger. Colder. More final. He'd underestimated how far Dragan would go. Had gambled Thessaly's life on honor among criminals. A concept that never existed. He'd failed her. Failed to protect the one pure thing in his corrupted world. Last chance. Casimir's voice dropped to deadly quiet. Let her go. Dragan pressed his gun against Casimir's forehead. Or what? You're unarmed, alone, about to... The explosion tore through the north wall. Blinding flash. Concussive wave. Half of Dragan's soldiers went down immediately. Vex's crew pouring through the breach, automatic weapons blazing. Casimir dove left, grabbed a falling soldier's weapon, came up firing with practiced precision. I said I came alone, Casimir shouted over gunfire. I lied. Chaos erupted. Vex had brought 40 soldiers. 20 more circled from the docks. Dragan's men were skilled but outnumbered. The warehouse became a killing floor. Bullets ripping through metal, blood spraying across concrete, screams mixing with gunfire. Casimir fought through, single-minded. Thessaly. Only Thessaly mattered. He took 3 soldiers down with headshots, pushed toward the basement stairs. Dragan fired at him. Bullet grazed Casimir's shoulder. He didn't stop. Another shot. This one hit ribs, cracked bone. Casimir stumbled but kept moving. The basement door was steel reinforced. Casimir fired into the lock. Once. Twice. Kicked it open. Thessaly was there, still bound, blood on her wrists. but alive. Her eyes went wide. "Casimir! I've got you!" He rushed forward, cutting the zip ties with a fallen guard's knife. "I've got—" The bullet hit him from behind. Lower back. Kidney. Casimir collapsed, weapon clattering. Dragan stood in the doorway, gun smoking, smiling through blood streaming from a head wound. "Predictable," Dragan said. "You always were—" Thessaly moved. Small, fast, desperate. She grabbed the knife Casimir dropped and threw herself at Dragan. The blade was too big for her hands, her aim wild, but desperation made her fierce. She stabbed blindly, caught his thigh. Dragan screamed, gun swinging toward her. Casimir lunged. Pain exploded through his body. He'd been shot 3 times, was bleeding internally, should have been incapacitated. But watching Dragan aim at Thessaly unlocked something primal. He tackled the older man, both crashing to the floor. They fought brutally. Dragan's gun skittered away. Casimir's hands found his throat, squeezed. Dragan clawed at his face, drew blood. They rolled. Casimir was dying, could feel it, blood pooling, vision darkening, but he held on. "Not her." Casimir's voice was gravel and rage. "Never. Her." Dragan's struggles weakened, then stopped. Eyes went glassy. Casimir held pressure 10 seconds longer, making sure, making permanent. Then he collapsed. Casimir. Thessaly was there, small hands on his face. "No, no, no, stay awake, please. Stay awake." "Safe?" He could barely whisper. "You're safe? Don't you dare die." Tears streamed down her face. "You promised. You promised you wouldn't leave." Boots thundered down the stairs. Vex. Blood spattered. Phone already dialing. "Medic. Now. Boss is down." Casimir's vision tunneled. But through the darkness, he saw Thessaly's face. Scared. Brave. Choosing hope even when everything was bleeding out. "Proud," he whispered. "So proud." Then howling. Familiar. Impossible. Brutus crashed through the doorway. Vex must have brought him. The dog pushed past everyone, laid his scarred head on Casimir's chest, whimpering, begging his human to stay. Thessaly held Casimir's hand. Brutus kept vigil. And Casimir Torino, the man who'd chosen power over everything, let go of consciousness, thinking about the 2 beings who'd taught him what actually mattered. Not empire, not fear, not control. Family, love. The kind that made you fight impossible odds and take bullets, meant for someone else. Worth dying for, maybe even worth living for, if he survived. Casimir woke to white ceiling tiles and the steady beep of a heart monitor. 47 hours after the warehouse. 3 bullets removed. 1 kidney damaged beyond repair. Internal bleeding stabilized. The doctors called it miraculous. Vex called it too stubborn to die. Casimir called it unfinished business. The first thing he saw when his eyes focused was Thessaly. Curled in the bedside chair, head on her arms, sleeping fitfully. Dirt still on her clothes from 2 days ago, wrists bandaged, face pale with exhaustion, but alive, safe, real. His hand moved, tubes and 4S pulling, reaching for her. The motion woke her. She jolted upright, eyes red-rimmed and terrified until they met his. Then her face crumpled with relief so pure it hurt to witness. "You're awake." Her voice cracked. "They said you might not, that you lost so much blood." She couldn't finish. Just grabbed his hand with both of hers and held on like he might disappear. "Hey." Casimir's voice was sandpaper rough. "I promised, remember? I don't break promises. You almost did." Tears tracked down her cheeks. "You died twice, in the ambulance. They had to shock your heart. I heard the medics talking. But I came back." Each word cost effort, because someone told me about choosing brave. And I wasn't finished being brave yet. Thessaly climbed carefully into the hospital bed, avoiding his tubes and bandages, and pressed her face against his shoulder. She shook with silent sobs, all the terror and trauma she'd held back finally breaking free in the safety of his presence. Casimir wrapped his working arm around her, tubes be damned, and held this child who'd somehow become his entire world. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better, should have seen dragons planning, should have... You took 3 bullets for me. Thessaly lifted her head, wiping her nose. Sister Merwin said, you weren't even supposed to survive one. That you kept fighting when your body should have stopped. That you killed the bad man, even though you were dying. She touched his face gently, like checking he was real. That's more than protection. That's everything. The door opened. Vex entered, carrying coffee, stopping short when he saw Casimir conscious. Boss. Jesus. Welcome back. His voice carried uncharacteristic emotion. Thought we lost you. Status report. Casimir's brain defaulted to business. Old habits. Kovac organization is broken. Dragon's lieutenant surrendered when word spread you survived. We've absorbed their territory, consolidated operations. Vex paused. But boss, there's complications. The firefight was loud, public. Police are asking questions. FBI sniffing around. Your name is connected to... I know. Casimir had known this was coming. Violence at that scale left evidence. Bodies. Witnesses. Legal consequences he'd dodged for 30 years. What's the exposure? Vex glanced at Thessaly, uncertain. Casimir nodded. She deserved honesty. Federal prosecutor is building a RICO case. They have testimony from 3 of Dragon's soldiers who flipped. Connect you to racketeering, money laundering, extortion going back 15 years. Vex's jaw tightened. Best case scenario. You're looking at 25 years federal... Silence. Heavy. Final. Thessaly's hand squeezed Casimir's. Then I need lawyers. Casimir kept his voice steady. Best money can buy. I need to arrange transfers. Legitimate businesses kept separate from criminal operations. Assets liquidated. Money moved into trusts. He looked at Thessaly. And I need adoption paperwork. Immediately. Boss, if I'm going to prison, I need to know she's protected. Legal guardian status. Trust fund for her education, living expenses, everything squared away before they arraign me. You're not going to prison. Thessaly's voice was fierce. Small, but absolute. I won't let them take you. Sweetheart, it doesn't work like... I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. How you saved me. How you almost died protecting me. How you're good. Her eyes blazed with determination that reminded Casimir painfully of himself at that age, before cynicism, before violence became vocabulary. Thessaly. He cupped her face with his unbandaged hand. I am good now, because of you. But I wasn't always. I did terrible things, hurt people, built an empire on fear. His voice cracked. I deserve consequences. Everyone deserves second chances. She pressed her forehead against his. You taught me that. You and Brutus. That no matter how damaged or scary you've been, love can reach you. Change you. Tears fell on his hospital gown. You don't get to save me and then give up. That's not how family works. Family. The word hit Casimir like a physical blow. He'd never had family. Never believed he deserved it. But this fierce, broken, beautiful child was offering him exactly that. Unconditional. Permanent. Real. Vex. Casimir's voice firmed. Get me Derek Castellano, best defense attorney in Chicago. Tell him money's no object. Already called him. He's coming tomorrow. Vex smiled slightly. Also, there's someone else here. Been waiting 47 hours, hasn't left. He opened the door wider. Brutus barreled through, normally forbidden in hospitals, but apparently rules bent when you owned half the administrative board. The dog jumped carefully onto the bed, avoiding Casimir's injuries with surprising awareness, and pressed his scarred head against his human's chest. Whimpering, relieved. Home? Thessaly laughed through tears, scratching Brutus's ears. The 3 of them, damaged man, orphaned girl, scarred dog, formed a tableau of impossible healing. Family built from broken pieces. Over the next 6 weeks, everything changed. Derek Castellano was brilliant, ruthless, expensive. He negotiated with federal prosecutors, full cooperation, testimony against remaining Kovac associates, complete dismantling of Casimir's criminal operations in exchange for reduced charges. 18 months, minimum security, eligible for early release with good behavior. Casimir liquidated his empire, sold legitimate businesses, donated millions to charities, turned evidence over to authorities, cooperated fully. The Chicago Sun-Times ran headlines, "Mob Boss's Redemption, Torino Dismantles Own Criminal Enterprise." And through it all, Casimir fought for Thessaly. Adoption paperwork filed, background checks, home studies. Sister Merwin testified on his behalf, shocking everyone. "He's a dangerous man becoming a good father. I've watched for months. Thessaly saved him. Now he's choosing to save himself. That deserves recognition." The adoption hearing was emotional. Thessaly testified, 7 years old, facing a judge, explaining why a former mafia boss should become her father. "He keeps his promises. He chose me over his whole empire. He almost died for me. That's what daddies do. Choose their kids. Always." The judge, woman in her 60s, seen everything, studied Casimir for a long moment. "Mr. Torino, this is highly irregular. Your criminal history—" "I know." Casimir stood, hands clasped, humble in a way that would have been unthinkable a year ago. "I've done terrible things. I can't undo them. Can only try to do better going forward. That little girl taught me I was capable of good, of love, of being someone worth believing in." His voice broke. "Give me the chance to prove her right, please." 30 seconds of silence. Then the judge's gavel. "Adoption approved. With conditions, full completion of your federal sentence, mandatory therapy, supervised, visits until release, permanent custody upon good behavior demonstration." Thessaly screamed with joy, ran to Casimir. He caught her, still healing, ribs protesting, and held his daughter. His family. His second chance. "I love you." She whispered it for the first time. 3 words. Universe shifting. Casimir's tears fell freely. "I love you too, Tessie, so much." 6 months later, minimum security facility visiting day. Thessaly ran across the recreation yard, Brutus on his therapy dog leash beside her. Casimir knelt, prison jumpsuit, 10 pounds lighter, eyes clearer than they'd been in decades, and caught his daughter. "Daddy." She threw herself into his arms. Still strange hearing that word. Still perfect every time. "Hey, sweetheart, you've grown. Vex feeding you properly?" "Yeah." "He makes terrible pancakes, though. Not like yours." She pulled back, studying his face. "Are you okay? Really okay?" "I'm good." Truth. Casimir was healthier, physically and mentally, than he'd been in 30 years. Therapy twice weekly, no violence, no empire. Just books, reflection, healing. 9 months left. "Then I come home. I'm counting." Thessaly grinned. "I drew you something." She pulled out folded paper. Another crayon drawing. Their house, modest 3-bedroom Vex was maintaining. Garden. Brutus in the yard. 2 figures holding hands. Underneath, waiting for you. "Love, your daughter." Casimir pressed it to his chest. "Going on my cell wall, right next to the others." They spent the afternoon together, playing cards, walking the yard. Brutus content between them. Normal, simple. Everything Casimir never knew he needed. As visiting hours ended, Thessaly hugged him tight. "I'm proud of you, Daddy, for choosing brave, for choosing us. Best choice I ever made." Casimir kissed her forehead. "Get home safe. I'll call tonight." Watching her leave, small, fierce, his, Casimir felt something impossible. Peace. He'd lost his empire, served time, dismantled everything he'd built, but sitting in minimum security, scheduled for release in 9 months, awaiting the life he'd have with his daughter, Casimir Torino understood something crucial. He hadn't lost anything that mattered. He'd gained everything. A girl who saw good in monsters. A dog who remembered gentleness. A second chance at being human. Family. Real, permanent, unconditional family. Worth any price. Every sacrifice. All the blood and empire and power he'd surrendered. Worth everything. If this story touched you, let me know in the comments. Should I write more about Casimir and Thessaly's journey? Your support shapes what comes next. Subscribe so you don't miss their story continuing.